Hi, welcome to Distinti's World, number 14. This is the Divergent Epiphany. Yes, this is related to the book. This is for general audiences. Hello, my name is Robert Distinti, and I'm an electrical engineer with 30 years experience. I enjoyed the movie Divergent on many levels. And usually a good book means a good movie means a fantastic book. So I bought the book on audio so I can listen to it when I drive to and from, and I actually bought all the subsequent books in the series. And the book gives very rich detail of Triss's inner conflict and rationalizations. Like, for example, which doesn't really come out in the movie, is that, you know, suicide in one faction, let's say suicide in abnegation, is looked upon as a very selfish act, where in Dauntless, suicide is actually looked upon as a very selfless act. And also, she rationalizes that Dauntless, you know, giving your life to protect others is the ultimate form of selflessness. And so, in fact, she kind of rationalizes, and I don't forget which book, that Dauntless is more abnegation than abnegation, in spite of the fact that they do a lot of self-indulging things like tattoo themselves and have very flamboyant personalities. And sometimes in the other parts of the book, she rationalizes that doing the opposite actually is the better solution. The opposite of what you would think to be correct. So the epiphany occurred. I was driving home listening to the novel, and it struck a chord with me. I don't remember what part of the book I was in. All I remember is it sounded just like a lot of things I experienced early as far as conflict of fitting in and trying to reconcile things. And what happened was it dawned on me that we humans have diverged brains. We have a right brain and a left brain. Some people favor their left brain, and we're going to call them artisans from the Artisan Faction, just to use the terminology in the book. While others favor the right brain, which would be more erudite, which would be appropriate. And so if we look at the left brain faction, the artisan, the left brain faction are creative people whose talent appeals to the senses and emotions of others, to include fear. And that includes artists, photographers, musicians, songwriters, chefs, authors, writers, directors, videographers, filmographers, dancers, choreographers, politicians. Yes, politicians usually appeal to fear and emotion rather than logic. And, you know, fashion designers. The movie V for Vendetta, the character V said a very interesting thing. He said, artists use lies to tell us the truth. Now, the right brain faction, and this is, you know, not from the movie, this is from, you know, I'm just using the same word, erudite. The right brain faction uses logic and reason, hopefully devoid of emotion, to solve problems that plague human existence. And these people might be philosophers, scientists, engineers, mathematicians. So if we were to compare the two factions on a point-by-point basis, artisans, their drive is passion and the love of the art, more emotion. Whereas on the erudite side, the drive is to reason, problem solving, and producing effective outcomes. On the artisan side, the unit size, which this occurs around, is usually the individual. I mean, chefs rarely work as teams. Artists rarely ever work as teams. Dancers, well, they could work as a team, but choreographers probably don't work in a team. So the creative elements, writers typically work alone. Directors, is usually one director. They may hire sub-directors to help out, but they have the final word on the creative outcome. Okay, whereas on the erudite side, it's a team, division of labor. We all have to work together. There's something to be said for that. Okay, the artisans tend to be detail-oriented. Every little fabric on the dress has to be perfect. Every little seam, every little stroke of paint on the artwork has to be, every little note in the music has to be perfect. And artisans have to understand every detail of their art. They just can't, like, subcontract parts out. They have to know how to do everything as every part of their art. Where on the erudite side, things are result-oriented. Only need to understand enough to get the desired outcome. Adequacy is sufficient. Adequacy is efficient. No sense building something more than what the customer wants. But you can't build less than what the customer wants. You got to optimize it for just exactly what the customer wants without anything more. So when students go to college to expose their artisan side or to train their artisan side, they're more interested in mastering their art Now, why do they do that? Because on the artisan side, it's your portfolio that gets you the job interview. It's your demo reel that gets you the job interview. It's your sample of cheese souffle that would get you the job, not your resume so much, and not your grades, certainly not as much. Where on the erudite side, your grades open all doors. So these students are more in tune to worry about the grade rather than really understanding the art, because that's the way the incentive system goes here. And it's efficient, the way that's set up. So if it's efficient, it's efficient. And so students on the erudite, on the artisan side, tend to seek professors and teachers with winning track records. The teachers that are going to run them over the coals and really teach them something. You don't want a lame teacher that doesn't have any track record of success. Where on the erudite side, they seek easier professors. Because it's easier to get an A. A's open doors. B's and C's don't. Well, not as easy anyway. So what are the faction pressures for artisans? Audacity, pushing the envelope, being different, making a name for yourself, individual glory, audacity. Teamwork, it's not really pushed. It's the outcome of the art, the precision of the art, the individual glory that is glamorized. On the erudite side, the faction pressures are to conform to standards, believe what everyone else believes. Well, not really always. Everyone must pull in the same direction. Success means more work for the team. Where here, glory for the individual means more work for the individual, and possibly for the people that helped them along the way. And on the artisan side, reuse is discouraged. You don't plagiarize. You're not going to make money by making copies of. You're not going to make fame and fortune by making copies of other people's work and trying to sell them. Where on the erudite side, reuse, leveraging what's already been done. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's highly encouraged. Okay, so you can see there's a difference between these two factions. Now, what I've just told you is just a rough preliminary idea for the purpose of this video. I'm sure others can come up with better delineations and possibly other faction types like type A personalities, yada, yada. To add more breadth to this discussion, I leave that to others. So how does this apply to me? Well, I grew up left brain. I loved art. I loved photography. I loved music. I loved that stuff. I was leaning in the direction of photography. Had my own darkroom, could do color processing, had everything. I loved it. And at the age of 16, which ironically is the age of the choosing ceremony in the book Divergent, I read an article, and this is the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I read an article on how to build a light meter from Radio Shack parts. Now, ignore the schematic. I just threw any old schematic down there. That's not it had a cadmium sulfide cell, a 9-volt battery, and a 741 op amp. I learned how to solder from the book, and I was smitten. I was hooked. I never looked back. It was the coolest thing I'd ever done. I wanted to learn everything about being an engineer after that. But there was a problem. I went into now the erudite faction with an artisan way of thinking, and that caused a problem. I had trouble fitting in. I went to school to study, to understand how every little detail worked. And that's what left brain people do. They want to understand how do every art stroke, how to do every cooking skill, how to do every note, how to play every note. I wanted to learn everything about everything involved with my new faction. And the other students I tried to study with said, just learn the process, hit your I believe button just to get by. And I couldn't study with them because I wanted to understand what I'm learning. That's my left brain thinking. As opposed to the right brain thinking, which is you got to get the grade to get out. So the more efficient course was to do what they said, but that's not what my left brain was telling me. I wanted to master what I learned. And it took me a little longer to get through college because it was a lot more work for me than, but anyway. So a critical point occurred between my second year of UConn. The second year, this book came up, Intermediate Calculus, which is vector calculus, and there's a part in here on Green's theorem and Stokes' theorem. I spent a lot of time with this book trying to understand exactly how Green's theorem worked, how Stokes' theorem worked, and I thought I came up with a fantastic way to understand and explain them. So what do? I went to the math help session at UConn and met my professor there, and I explained to my professor how I thought that Green's theorem worked and how Stokes' theorem worked. And he goes, well, that's pretty interesting, but he goes, no, that's not correct. He said, you have to understand advanced set theory to understand how those theories work. That's what he told me. I walked away. I was devastated. I'm like, well, geez, I don't know. If I don't understand the tools I'm using, how can I be effective as an engineer? So I thought I was not. So that summer, that was the fall, that was the spring course. In the summer, I had a thought I was not adequate, but I realized I did love this stuff, this engineering stuff. And I considered my options. And like the book, I chose my faction and there's no going back. So that was the same thing. Luckily, my military training, my dauntless training, gave me the fortitude not to be a quitter. And I held up. The next fall, I took engineering electromagnetics, and in the beginning of this book, saved my engineering career, because the very first chapter of this book is a very simple explanation of Green's theorem and Stokes' theorem and all the divergent stuff. Well, not the book Divergent. There's a mathematical thing called Divergence. And it was ridiculously simple. I was right. I was livid. Because here, this PhD in mathematics told me I was wrong when I was right. I was livid. I was like, well, I can't trust any of these jerkwads. So I went totally tris. Just like in the book, she goes off half-cocked on these wild adventures all by herself, against everybody's, better advice. And in spite of people telling her not to do it, I did the same thing. I stopped showing up for class. I said, hey, I can learn this stuff better than these imbeciles can teach me. So I only showed up for the tests. And I did reasonably well on the tests, learning all this stuff myself. Didn't show up for the insulting classes where these idiots, couldn't trust what they were teaching me. But I got lost grades for no class participation. I lost points for attendance, and I lost points because I didn't hand in any of the damn homework. I just did the tests. And I did reasonably okay. Because I spent all my free time mastering my art, including the summers. Okay, and what I did in a lot of that free time is I wanted to learn, so I built my own computer from scratch. And this next video, I'm going to show you that computer that I built as part of my teaching myself my own art. And this computer shows you that I'm into understanding every little detail of my art. Every little stroke, every little wire was designed in that computer I'm about to show you. Go to the video of the computer that I've been holding onto for 20 years in my attic. What you are looking at is a computer I built for college. And you'll notice that the motherboard is not a printed circuit board like most people when they say they go buy a computer. They go buy a printed circuit board, put it in a case, and add whatever boards they want. This board was built wire by wire with the same technique like you could see on the back side of this card here. Just wire wrap wire soldered point to point. There's no printed circuit boards in here. And this is what I did to learn every aspect about computers. This is my own design. The memory is missing right now, but the memory is missing right now because many years ago I used it for other stuff. This graphic card here, this is on the bottom here, this graphic card here does basically a text display, an 80 by 25 text display, and it has the RGB output. And each one of these 4 parallel connections here can go to a graphic card. This graphic card has high resolution VGA, and I can have up to 4 graphic cards in there, all merging their each different plane onto an output display. This and this I developed. I got credit for in college as a senior project. I had other boards before that were a little more primitive. Okay, but you know, it looks like a standard PC. I'm going to put it down on its side now. I got it up in the air so you can see it in the sunlight. Hold on, let me put it down. This PC has, it's a full 32-bit microprocessor. It's got a hard drive and a floppy. It looks like a standard PC from the case. This is a standard PC case you could buy at the time. But it's a complete, you know, homebrew design. Completely homebrew. Even I wrote all the software for it as well. The compiler, the editor, the operating system, the IDE hard drive controller, floppy drive controller, keyboard driver, mouse driver, everything. And I learned so much from this that when I finally got done with it, I said, you know what, there's nothing more I can learn. And I went and bought a PC because I realized I spent the majority of my time writing software. That was my realization, that software is really the harder part of the computer. The hardware is actually not that bad. And you can see the printed circuit boards from behind, the detail of the wiring. Again, this is all point-to-point wiring. Even though these are printed circuit boards, they just have little, there's no actual routing except for power on these. These are for developing your own PC. And I use standard ICE, or I forget what they are, IDE connectors. So this was a lot of work, but it was worth every penny of it. And just an interesting point is, in my senior year, I met a professor who had a class in computer digital logic, digital theory, and I only showed up for the test. And the test was to optimize a logic network, and I did that just by writing the answer down because it was obvious. And he called me into his office for cheating, and I said, I didn't cheat, I'll do it right in front of you. So I did it right in front of him. He and I became good friends after that, and actually I used him for my senior project. He allowed me to use my video card that I designed as a senior project, and that was an easy A for me. So I learned a lesson. There's people I could work with. And then also my senior year, I had a math course taught by a professor from Columbia University. I showed up for every one of those classes because this guy taught me real stuff that made sense. And had I had that course way in the beginning, everything would have been a lot easier. He tied up a lot of things. So I realized late in my bachelor's, there are people that, you know, I can trust to tell me the good advice. They're not all idiots. Later, after my bachelor's degree, though, I promised never to go through the denigration of further college. I was like, I can figure all this stuff on my own pretty much. Why do I need to go to college? But then 15 years later, it became apparent that higher pay required it. A lot of companies require you to have a master's degree to get promoted. So with a few years of maturity, I decided to play the advantage of a master's degree to my advantage by using new electromagnetism. Simply what I did was I showed up for every class. I did all the homework. I participated. Basically, I realized that, you know, I don't want to make enemies of these professors. I made friends with them. And, you know, if they said that the Earth is purple with pink polka dots, and on the test I said the Earth is purple with pink polka dots, and bit my lip when I knew things were obviously wrong. Basically, by doing that, I showed them respect. So when it came time to do my graduate thesis, I had a 4.0 average, and I had their complete trust to do what I wanted to do. So going totally tris is not, I wish I'd had the maturity back then to do that differently. That my bachelor's degree would have probably been a 4.0 rather than a C average. But I had good fun doing it my way. So we have to diverge from single mind thinking. See, the problem with Albert Einstein, he was good with the theory, but he had no real understanding of experimental application. If he did, he would have realized that Maxwell's equations are wrong just by applying them. But he didn't. He had to trust that other people were doing this part right, giving him good information, and that's why he got stumbled in his theory. He couldn't finish unifying the fields. Okay, and I'm good in both of those, and it's an interesting when you can go between one and the other, as if there's no real difference. I'm good with the software and hardware. I wrote all the software for that computer, and I did all the hardware for it, and that's helped me greatly in my field as an engineer. I can go between the two and find you the optimal point in a design whereas somebody that's hardware specific is going to make a design with more hardware than software. Somebody that's software specific is going to try to do everything in software. You may not have an optimal design. Okay, abstract or conceptual modeling to mathematical modeling. I can go between those two, between design and realization fabrication. Over the year, when I started, I was just like a divergent individual, going off on my own, doing it by myself, want to do it, and I've learned over the years how to become part of a team, how to bite my tongue, how to fit in. So I can go between these two extremes with no problems. As long as the team is doing stuff right, I'll submit to the team. But if the team is going off into the weeds, I'm going to try to pull them back. Okay, left brain, right brain, I didn't realize until this divergent thing, until it dawned on me that my left brain is every bit as part of my engineering as my right brain. Form and function are one and the same. I can't separate the two. You can read this. I have developed a diverse skill set because one thing I learned, I was in ROTC at UConn. That was one thing I spent more time on. One of the advice that the ROTC cadre gave us was never stop developing yourself. So I always kept diving into stuff that I may not have known over the years to learn it better, to become more proficient at very diverse skill sets. That has served me very well. And it's not just these. I learned to sail. I learned how to enjoy classical music. Go off, and I'm going to learn to play the guitar. That's going to be one of my future self-development rules. But over the years, I did not realize how much my artisan faction of my brain affected what I did in engineering. This is what I did for my graduate thesis, which is a false color model of the field energy in a compound coil. Oh, but because I got a very left brain thing going on, I had to put a starburst and have it up and neat like it's floating in space. Got to make it look cool. Or here, this one here with a totally useless sphere in the background to give some kind of artistic impression, which has nothing to do with the erudite side of it. It's completely left brain stuff. But I did it because it was cool and people liked it. I liked it. It looks nicer. And then my logo, I never realized that, most people would pick something technology. I just picked an art thing. My logo for Mother Nature being a short hair, long neck woman, which I find enamoring. This is part of my graduate thesis. This is a coil of flat, part of a conductor of flat copper. And this is to test this is a false color of the chunking of a fractal algorithm. And the reason why I put the random colors into it so I can see how the software is chunking. And this helped out tremendously. I'm going to show you this in more detail. You can see as you chomp up the conductor, the farther away you go, the more larger pieces you can take without any integration error. As you get close to the test charge, this thing, the numerical integration algorithm has to dice everything up into finer and finer chunks in order to get higher precision. By doing this, you get a computational efficiency. Because if you had to do this level of chunking over the entire conductor, it would take incredible amount of computing time to compute all those zillions of little chunks, where if things are farther away, you can treat a bigger chunk as its own thing and save computing time. So this is where the left brain, making a dazzling display of it, actually helped me, because I could see in here where the chunks were missing or where things didn't line up. So the left brain side helped the right brain side debug the software easier. But it looked cool when I did it. I didn't realize. So I've never stopped with the left brain. Sorry for the problem with my printer here. This is a picture taken out back on an early morning on Halloween, where the sun made the fog turn glow orange with silver caps. This is another one where all the fog in the valley is silver. Here, there's a temperature inversion early in the morning, which made all the fog in the valley, and it looks like I'm part of an island archipelago in the clouds. There's my cat, Terrence the Terrible, who just passed away. You can see he makes everything look classy. He's a very pretty dude. Trying to fit in a small box, and that really is just a clincher there. This guy fitting in here all by himself. Dazzling ducks. I love art as much as I do science. Those are my boys. I've learned how to get lightning shots. I found some interesting things, atmospheric effects that occurred that I'm trying to understand. So basically, it's critical for everyone to learn how their brain works. That is how you can optimize your use of it. And that's how you can mature yourself. Okay, and if you're interested, I was thinking of producing a series about what I have learned about the mind and how to work the mind, to your advantage. Let me know if you're interested in the comments, and I'll start producing that series. Thank you for their time. The reason why I did this is to get this out of my brain, because I'm thinking too much about it. The parallels between the book and what happened to me are just very interesting. And also, I was looking at YouTube, and they said to get more followership, you need to do a video about yourself, like a Genesis video, they called it, so people know who you are and where you came from, yada yada. So I figured, well, it solves two birds with one stone. Thank you very much.